Well,
So
let's talk about these injuries. I mean, from what I understand, Greenlaw is going to play. He's missing practice, but he is scheduled to play from what it sounds like, or at least what the word is from the building. But I do think that there's a good chance that Armstead's going to be out again. They said that it could be a 2 week thing initially. So it sounds like he'll probably be out. Maybe they're without Hargrave as well, or as Shannon Sharp calls him, Jerome Hargrove. They'll be without him potentially. And then Charvarius Ward. We know that these injuries are here, and we know that the Cardinals are not the best team, but they are 2-2 since Kyler Murray's come back. And you can be a lot better than a team, but when you have a ton of injuries, it kind of levels the playing field. So, Larry, I'll start with you. Are you concerned at all if those three don't go, Charvarius Ward, Hargrave, and Armstead, that brings the 49ers back to the pack enough to make this game at least interesting?
no, my bigger concern, Jesse, is that they get to the playoffs with a less than 100% Greenlaw or without Greenlaw. So, like, I think they're pretty loaded at linebacker. I like Flanagan Fowles. I like Curtis Robinson. I like the two rookies. And I was trying to, kind of flesh that out with Wilkes today a little bit. Do you like Graham? Do you like Winters? Because I know Greenlaw is going to go, and he's going to try to go. But to me, there's a handful of guys that the Niners have got to have at full tilt to get this thing done on the back end in the playoffs. And that would be like Debo and obviously CMC and Trent offensively, maybe Kittle. And then on defense, it's Warner and Bosa and Greenlaw. And if you have a healthy Greenlaw and a rested Greenlaw, I think the Niners are going to be hard to beat. So I would err on the side of conservative, and I would try to – I think the Niners can beat the Cardinals without Greenlaw. I'm not saying they could win with all their backups or anything, but I definitely think that they don't need – they could rest Greenlaw because they've got quality depth there and go with other guys, and that's what I would do. I would try to hold him out. You want to not – I'd sit him this week. I'd play him next week, and then if you get that win against the Ravens, I might sit him another week. But I'd rather have him for the biggest games, Ravens, playoffs, than have him for this game.
So even without Greenlaw, Hargrave, and Armstead, you're not worried about them stopping the run if all three of them sit?
Well, I like some of the other guys. I mean, I like what I'm seeing out of Givens. I like what I'm seeing out of Kinlaw, Kalia Davis. I mean, I don't feel great about it, right? Armstead is,
of course,
but right. I think they can win this game without Armstead and without Kinlaw, or without Armstead and without Hargrave. Mooney is a concern, but they just signed Jason Verrett. They like what they're seeing out of Darrell Luter. We're in that part of the schedule, guys, where the Niners may have to lean on the youth. They're going to have to lean on Kalia Davis inside. They're going to have to maybe lean on young DBs. They may have to lean on a couple young linebackers. And this would be the part of the schedule where they probably should and could do that. So I'd like to see them try it. I know a lot of people are saying, no, play your best, play your best. I don't know. I want to see them. I want to see more of a healthy contingent against the Ravens, and I want to see hopefully a full intact team come playoff time.
What about you, Coach?
Yeah, I mean, I tend to agree. I understand that right now we want everybody to play because we do have the number one seed. So we got to keep the main thing, essentially. We have to win out, right? I understand that we got everybody else dealing with their own druthers of the season, but for what it's worth, we can't afford to lose a game, especially a divisional game. So this one counts. Yeah, I do tend to say that this is the one where coaching is going to have to get us through. You're not going to be able to lead with your best guys because you're left with two decisions, essentially, right? You're saying to yourself, all right, we've got requisite talent that's going to be out. All right, it's going to be a clear dip in production. But at the same time, we're playing a team that is, ranked 31st off defensively and 19th offensively, respectively. So this is the time where you lean more on your coaching and you let younger guys to go ahead and get the reps that they need. Because losing a Dre Greenlaw or an Eric Armstead or somebody earlier into the season, right? I mean, well, later into the season now, before we get to the playoffs, could deem as catastrophic. So yeah, I lean with what Larry's line of thinking is that it's time for us to see what the young guys got anyway. And if you think about it, last week we saw a bit of that anyway with Eric Armstead being out. We got a healthy dose of Javon Kinlaw and Kalia Davis playing. Kalia Davis was left a bit more to be desired, but at the same time, this is what we need to do because you think about it, the bigger issue is what? We got, let's just go ahead and say for what it is. I didn't see this coming, but we have hands down the best roster in NFL right now.
Yep.
There's not a team that is better than them. So now we have to figure out how are we going to calibrate with A, paying what we have, B, figuring out who's worth the money versus their age and their talent, and C, how much development are we going to get out of the young guys that are eventually going to replace them? And what type of reps can we steal along the way at any time to get proof of concept to A1, see if they're worth pushing off of what we need, because that's what good teams do, right? We pushed off of Kwanzaa Alexander when he was a big time free agent acquisition where we leaned on Dre Greenlaw, right? Where we leaned on Fred Warner. And these are the times where we pushed off of these guys where, quite frankly, none of us knew, but the organization knew early. So that's how strong rosters stay ahead of the game is they play their young guys, they develop them, and they get them pushing forward where when the rest of the league is paying high price for a guy that we've essentially moved on from, we've got his replacement in tow. Games like these is how you get to that solution, right? So yeah, it's not going to be one of those games where we can come in with the best of the best, the tip of the spear of what we got. But to be quite honest, we shouldn't have to, right? This team is not good enough for us to worry about that. And now is the time for us to rest our starters, all right, for the latter part of the season and the postseason, and to see what we have out of our young guys. So yeah.
Yeah, I do think that there's an element of, and I talked about this early in the week, blessing in disguise, where you do get to get a sneak peek at some of these young players, get them that development, and also not only for the future, but they might need them in this year. What if a player goes out mid-game and misses half of a playoff game or has to miss a playoff game? We're starting to see that the 49ers probably have a lot more depth than what we initially thought going into the season. I know, Larry, we talked many times about concern, depth on the defensive line. Well, some of those mid-season acquisitions, they fulfilled that. And then I think we had some similar concerns about the offensive line as well as the secondary. And I think the depth in all three of those has improved as the season's gone along, which is great because now you're needing to lean on some of that depth. So I don't think long-term I'm overly concerned about it. I guess what keeps creeping into my mind is at some point you can even things out with talent if enough people go out. And the Falcons game last year is what keeps popping into my mind, where it was like, okay, they went in there without 3 or 4 defensive starters. And then throughout the war of attrition in that game, they lost another 4, and it was enough for them to lose the game. Now, the big difference is the offense this year is in a much better spot. You've got Brock Purdy instead of Jimmy Garoppolo. You now have CMC on this team. He was not there for that game. So I think offensively, if they have to get in a shootout, it should still be a very winnable game. But the more players that don't play, and we've seen Connor kind of run ruckshaw on our defense before, well, all of a sudden you start moving 3 key cogs out of the middle of that defense, I think things can get a little bit interesting. I'm not picking Arizona. I would still pick the 49ers to win and probably comfortably, but at some point things even out. So something worth looking at, I guess.